In the tabling of the 2018 budget, one of the proposed items is to increase the maternity leave from 60 days to 90 days for the private sector. It's a controversial benefit that many employers say will affect productivity. So with us in the studio today is the Executive Director of the Malaysian Employers Federation, or MEF, Dato' Shamsuddin Bardan. Dato', thank you so much for joining us on Ringgit Sense.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about the benefits in the recent tabling of the budget, so one of the things that has been quite talked about is the extension of maternity leave from 60 days to 90 days.
Yes.
So first of all, what does MEF think about it?
I would say that the extension from 60 days to 90 days is actually as a shocker to us, because there was no discussion, there was no, I would say, even any kind of indication that this is going to be so. And especially so you look at the kind of benefits that the employers are giving currently as far as maternity leave is concerned. Yes, we do have 60 days currently, but that 60 days is fully paid by the employers. And if you look at other jurisdictions, basically, most of the countries, even in developed world, actually have a system where the maternity leave period is actually being paid through co-funding. Yeah? And in fact, in Singapore, for example, when the government of Singapore extended the maternity leave from 60 days to 82 days, the additional leave period is taken over by the government, even for the private sector, in the sense that the government provide full pay for that period, and that is only meant for the first two births, but from the third to fourth birth, the government of Singapore actually funded the whole maternity leave period.
Okay, so in implementing this, we actually taking a look at the statistics, it's actually said that an average of 250,000 women take maternity leave every year. So do you think that maybe some employers will be quite resistant to abide by this proposal? Why? And will it incur more cost for them?
In terms of actual costing, this can even be the additional leave period just to pay the 30 days maternity leave can be up to more than 700 million per year. Yeah? And of course, in the private sector, when you actually, when your staff goes on maternity leave, you have no choice but to get a replacement staff to do the job. And that can be additional 700 million per year. And if we add it together, it's about 1.4 billion. So that I would say is a big chunk of our money is going to go on this particular funding of the maternity leave. And mind you here that 1.4 billion is over about 18 billion wages costs in the private sector. Yeah, so I would say that that is, more than about 5% increase in cost, about 6% increase in cost, which I think is something that most employers can hardly do so in the current climate, because things are very challenging. And even we have some big companies now talking about restructuring, VSS, reduction of benefits and pay, things like that. So here we are talking about additional 30 days maternity leave at a very challenging period, basically. So I would say that perhaps what the authorities can do, we can discuss about the matter and perhaps, introduce the additional leave period on a staggered basis. Don't come it hard on the employers. Okay. And I would suggest that perhaps we look at about 10 days for a period of 6 years, so that at the end of the 6-year period, we can still have 90 days. But of course, like I say, the funding of it is very, very critical also.
Okay, so so we can agree that it will incur some costs on the employers, but how will the government be able to help with this, with sharing the cost?
That's why I say that we can talk about actually where should the money come as far as the additional 30 days is concerned. I say there are many ways of doing it. Co-funding is one of the ways. So if it can be on the basis of 30% or 33% come from the employers, 33% come from the employee side, 33% come from the government. Then that co-sharing kind of a system will at least alleviate the issues faced by the employers.
Okay, so what do you see are some of the challenges in implementing this proposal aside from the cost?
Of course, basically is that, currently women made up about half of the workforce in the private sector. Yeah? My worry will be, because there is this increase in the maternity leave period and also, of course, the cost itself, there may be some reluctance by employers to actually engage more women. And that can actually be counterproductive. And I would say that, of course, as MEF, we encourage more women to be in the labor market. Yeah? And how can we actually handle that particular negativity? Yeah? So that's why I say that if the costs are not all loaded to the employers, then possibly the employers may not have that kind of attitude in trying to reduce the number of intake for women. And perhaps, of course, we can have various policies set to actually now say, okay, look, if you have how many children, then what is our desire as a nation? Is it because in the private sector currently we have about up to 5 surviving children, whereas as a policy, if you look at what the public sector is doing, basically they are saying that, okay, look, your 360 days maternity leave is meant for 4 births or 4 children, whereas in the private sector we are talking not just birth but 5 surviving children. So that I think has to be relooked, because what I understand from what our Yang Amat Prime Minister say is to say that we follow the practice in the public sector as far as maternity leave is concerned, but we are not clear from the private sector now, well, what is it actually that we are talking about. But my understanding of the public sector maternity leave with the extension of additional 60 days leave granted during the budget is something like, yes, you take 90 days per birth, 90 times 4 is 360. As simple as that. And if that is the desire, that can be actually be incorporated into the law, but I think take some aspect of staggered implementation rather than immediate.
Okay, so step by step then.
Yep, sure.
What are the industries that you see will be most affected by this proposal?
I would say all industries. Yeah, and of course, nowadays, say for example, the majority of the employees are in the services industry. Yeah? Things like banking, retail trade, tourism, things like that, and also hotel industry. So those are basically industries that can be impacted by this. Of course, when you talk about the manufacturing sector, electronic will be very much affected also in that sense.
Yeah, okay. So before we wrap though, very briefly, what are your views on some other benefits that were mentioned during the tabling of the budget? For example, flexi hours and also allowing pregnant staff to leave work early.
Yeah, of course, the pregnant staff leaving early is only meant for the public sector employees, but even that also would have a lot of negative impact, because as a service user from the public sector, we're not going to be sure whether the lady in the first place that we are having appointment is pregnant and at what stage of pregnancy, and whether the lady is going to be there if we come at say, for example, we come at 4 o'clock. Then they say, sorry, this lady is not here because she went back early. So in that kind of situation, it can create a lot of, I would say, negativity. And I would say that really that is not productive to have ladies that are pregnant for more than 5 months or 6 months to leave early, 1 hour earlier. And somehow they say that if your husband is nearby, then your husband also can go one hour earlier.
The other benefits, flexi hours.
Okay, flexi hours basically is, MEF fully supports that, yeah. Of course, we would be better if that kind of policy is being accompanied by legislative changes. Currently, we have, I would say, a lot of constraints, especially from the Employment Act side, because, Employment Act says that work is being calculated based on daily basis, on weekly basis. Whereas many of the developed countries, is adopting what we call it as annualized working hours. They say that so long as you had fulfilled your working hours that you had contracted for the year, you don't have to come for the rest of the year. Then you can stay at home and enjoy your wages. And this can be very good, say for example, for the tourism industry at the East Coast, for example. We know that East Coast around this period would have major floods, things like that. There's no point for you to come to work kind of thing, and tourists would not be there. So I would say it's better for the hotels to actually close during that period, say for 2 months or 3 months. And if actually you actually had put in all the hours during the good season, the good period, then, okay, let us not come to work during for 3 months or over the period, and then we stay at home, we still got our wages. That, I would say, is a win-win arrangement that can be done. Yes, actually, the flexible arrangement is beneficial both to the employers and also both to the employees. The question is whether the authorities is going to be reflecting that into the law.
Yeah. Okay, some very valid points there, Dato. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.